Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Okay, today we're tackling a really big one, a sensitive one, the Taiwan Strait. And specifically, this reported decision to pause about $400 million in weapons aid heading to Taiwan. And this wasn't just any aid. We're talking lethal munitions, advanced drones, that kind of thing. So our mission really is to unpack this. Is it a tactical move, leverage, or are we looking at something bigger, a fundamental shift in U.S. commitment?
Exactly. And we really need to figure that out. Is it just a clever bargaining chip, like you said, maybe for trade talks? Or does it signal something, well, more profound, a strategic change? The timing here is just, it's critical.
Yeah.
And fascinating, maybe a bit worrying too. This reported pause, it supposedly happened right before that key phone call.
Between Trump and Xi Jinping. Yeah.
Right. And this was all happening while the U.S. was, really pushing it again to try and lock down a big trade agreement with China after years of those tariff battles.
And we saw results from that call pretty quickly. The official line from the U.S. was productive. They mentioned progress on trade, on fentanyl, even on TikTok. But here's the kicker, the silence. Neither Washington nor Beijing mentioned Taiwan, not in the official readouts. And considering Taiwan is, well, probably Beijing's most sensitive foreign policy issue, that silence is loud.
Oh, it's incredibly loud. That silence almost certainly means something. It suggests maybe a trade-off was implied, if not stated.
Right. So let's try and unpack this for you. How does this kind of tactical play, using security aid like a lever, how does that fit into the huge complex dynamic between the U.S., Taiwan, and China?
Okay, first we got to remember the basic reality here. It's kind of fixed. China's Communist Party views Taiwan as, well, a province that needs to be brought back into the fold. They've consistently said they'll annex it. By force, if necessary. Well, Taiwan's government and its people, they overwhelmingly reject Beijing's role. Simple as that. And this fundamental conflict, it's what fuels the whole arms race, basically. With Taipei depending almost entirely on the U.S. for the weapons it needs to, deter an invasion.
And that phone call, it wasn't just about the immediate issues like trade or fentanyl. It set up future meetings too, right? They agreed to meet in Korea in October, and then a Trump visit to China next year. So dialogue is happening.
Dialogue is happening, yes. But analysts jumped on this immediately, questioning, at what cost? Who really gained more from that specific exchange?
Okay, so what are people saying?
Well, let's look at Craig Singleton. He's with the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. Now, they're usually pretty hawkish on China, but Singleton suggests the outcome of that call really tilted in China's favor.
How so?
He thinks Beijing is giving up stuff that sounds good but doesn't cost much. He calls them high PR, low-meaning deliverables.
High PR, low meaning. Like what does that mean in practice?
Okay, think about fentanyl, right? China might agree to some symbolic actions, maybe share some technical data on precursor chemicals. Looks great in a press release. Cooperation. But what are they getting back? Potentially real relief on tariffs, looser tech controls, and, maybe most importantly, a signal that U.S. support for Taiwan isn't unconditional. It seems like an unbalanced trade,
Yeah, it sounds like offering a coupon for a free coffee in exchange for pausing someone's mortgage payments. The leverage seems skewed, high risk.
Exactly. You're trading strategic stability, potentially for tactical gains. And the reaction on the ground sort of confirms this feeling of risk. We heard these stories from that big defense expo in Taipei when the news broke.
Oh, yeah. What happened?
Apparently, the news about the aid pause just rattled people big time. Staff at one major company's booth were described as frantically Googling when reporters asked them about it. The whole atmosphere just shifted from business, deals, tech to anxiety.
Wow. That immediate sort of gut reaction really tells you something. And the Taiwan government, how did they handle it?
They played it very cool, publicly, which is probably smart. They didn't confirm or deny the reports. They just put out a statement stressing, the usual lines, that the U.S. has long supported Taiwan in strengthening its defense capabilities, trying to project stability.
Right. Maintain that image of consistent, unwavering support, even if there are questions swirling.
Precisely. And that need for consistency brings us to a really interesting contrast with the recent past.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because this pause, how unusual is it, really? Looking back, especially at Trump's first term, wasn't the story actually about more support for Taiwan?
It absolutely was. During that first term, arms sales to Taiwan just surged. They went past $10 billion. That was the highest level we'd seen since the 1990s. Big numbers.
And Congress got involved too, right? More recently.
Yes, since 2022, Congress gave presidents a new tool, the Presidential Drawdown Authority, or PDA. It lets the White House send up to $1 billion a year in weapons directly from existing U.S. stockpiles. Not just new sales, but stuff we already have ready to go for Taiwan and Ukraine.
Okay, so wait. If Congress authorized $1 billion a year from stockpiles using PDA, and this pause is $400 million, which might be a mix of things, maybe new sales, maybe aid, is the pause more about sending a political signal than actually cutting off the weapons flow completely?
It's probably both, but you're right. The signaling aspect is huge, especially for Beijing. And we also see sources pointing to a definite shift in the U.S. approach in this second term. It feels cooler. Trump has openly questioned, the value of supporting Taiwan. He suggested Taiwan should pay the U.S. for protection. And he seems to prefer direct commercial sales now over aid or using those PDA stockpiles.
So it's moving from maybe a security partnership towards something more transactional, like a business deal.
That seems to be the direction, yeah. And look what's in this specific $400 million pause. Lethal munitions, autonomous drones.
Right, not just spare parts.
Exactly. Those drones are absolutely central to Taiwan's whole new defense idea, the asymmetric strategy, using lots of small, smart, cheaper things to fight off a much larger force. So pausing that specific type of aid, it directly hits their current defense planning. It hurts.
Makes sense. Taiwan must see this shift too. How are they reacting?
Well, their president, Lai Ching-te, he's been emphasizing the need for Taiwan itself to build defense capabilities.
Yeah.
And also societal resilience through continued preparedness. It's not just about waiting for help.
So focusing inward on self-reliance.
Definitely. And it's not just talk. Taipei has pledged to seriously boost its own defense spending. They're aiming for 5% of their GDP by 2030. That's a big commitment. They're signaling they're serious.
Okay, so if you're Taiwan and you see the U.S. potentially using aid as a lever, boosting your own defenses makes perfect sense. This brings us back to the tactical view. William Yang from the Crisis Group. What's his take?
Yang leans towards the tactical explanation. He argues this pause is likely maneuvering, not abandonment. He suggests Trump is probably putting Taiwan on the back burner, just for now. Why? To focus on getting concessions from China on other things, like trade. It's leverage, pure and simple.
Okay, that sounds plausible tactically, but what are the risks? What happens if these tactical moves start looking like strategic weakness, especially in a place like the Taiwan Strait?
That's the absolute core of the danger here. When does a tactic start undermining the whole strategy?
Right. What's the warning there?
Well, Yang puts it pretty starkly. He warns that what Washington might see is just a temporary tactical move. China could see it differently. He says it's creating an opportunity for China to prolong this pause into something that could potentially become a new reality.
A new reality, meaning normalization, where aid pauses become expected.
Exactly. The risk is that this pause sets a precedent. If the U.S. shows its Taiwan commitment is conditional, maybe linked to trade deals, China will just push harder next time and the time after that. They'll try to make inconsistency the new normal. And that fundamentally weakens deterrence. It makes the whole situation much more dangerous.
So for Beijing, it's not just about stopping this one $400 million package. It's about establishing that U.S. support for Taiwan isn't rock solid. It's negotiable, can be turned on and off.
Precisely. That potential inconsistency adds a huge amount of volatility. But we should also look at the counter-argument. Not everyone thinks support is just going to evaporate.
Okay, what's the more optimistic view?
Amanda Xiao, she's the China director at the Eurasia Group. She offers that perspective. She argues that, yes, Beijing will push hard for more assurances on Taiwan after this, but she believes fundamental U.S. backing isn't likely to disappear completely.
And why does she think that? What keeps the support flowing?
She points to the deep, broad support for Taiwan within the U.S. political system. In Congress, across parties, it goes beyond any one administration. She predicts that things like arms sales, letting President Lai transit through the U.S., these important signals, they'll probably resume after Trump makes that visit to China next year. So, in her view, this pause is more like a temporary concession, a way to smooth the path for high-level talks, not a permanent policy shift.
Okay, so this really boils down, for you, the listener, to understanding this tension. We're seeing a high-stakes negotiation strategy, very high risk. It's walking this incredibly thin line between, on one hand, tactical maneuvering.
Right, using the aid pause to get leverage on trade, fentanyl, whatever.
And on the other hand, the huge strategic risk.
Yeah, the risk of letting China basically set a new normal. A
Wow.
normal where U.S. support for Taiwan isn't seen as reliable anymore. It's conditional, it's inconsistent. And the massive question for everyone involved, Taipei, Washington, Beijing, is whether the tactical gains are worth potentially eroding that long-term strategic commitment, especially there in the Taiwan Strait.
It's really clear that this $400 million pause has become way more than just a line item in a budget or a supply issue. It's a flashing signal in these incredibly complex U.S.-China talks, a signal that wasn't in the official summaries, but seems to be driving a huge part of the conversation behind the scenes.
So here's the thought to leave you with. If a leader can successfully use a temporary halt in crucial military aid, use it as leverage to get concessions on other, maybe unrelated issues like trade or drugs, does that set a totally new precedent, a potentially much more volatile one, for how really sensitive relationships like the one around Taiwan are managed going forward? How do you weigh short-term tactical wins against long-term strategic stability? That's the fundamental dilemma here.